Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an utmost accurate and detailed description of the various cities of Sigmar. Naturally, we'll start off with the poster boy, the fortress city of Hammerhall. Hammerhall is pretty special, as half of the city is located in Ghyra, which is basically like the Amazon rainforest, but with angry trees, while the other half of the city is located in Aqsha, which is basically like Africa, but no, actually it seems like a pretty accurate description. So despite it technically being one city, the halves are vastly different from each other in terms of culture, industry, enemies, and most importantly for this video, the military.
There is only war.
Hammerhall Aqsha is a city of smoke and fire, which houses a population with unrivaled anger issues. Hammerhall Hot was the first foothold from which Sigmar sent his forces to conquer the realms after the Age of Chaos, and little has changed over the centuries. Being basically the Age of Sigmar version of the Imperium, all of its industry is focused on producing weapons and armor for the war effort. The population too is obsessed with violence and warfare, with the wide majority believing there is nothing better than a glorious death in the Dawnbringer war efforts. That in and of itself is no surprise, as Hammerhall has taken another page from the Imperium's book. Propaganda is as much a part of the city's lifeblood as the vast quantities of life-giving aqua garanis it imports from its better half. Fun thing about this city in particular is that because of its massive size, you can find anything, from canites to skinks amongst their ranks, so lots of cool Yorga potential here. Originally clad in the most generic color scheme known to Warhammer, Aqsha's forces have changed their coat under Verda's lead to better represent the realm's hot nature. For their insignia, they feature a magma-drawed-like dragon to represent their hot-blooded warmongering, and their leader's pet manticore.
Several of our local neighbors are saying now they want us to help them learn to use cover crops.
On the other side of the realm gate we find Hammerhall Ghyra, the agri-world of Sigmar's realm-spanning empire. Because a non-trivial issue with the mortal realms is that many places are too much of a hellscape to properly grow crops or set up a self-sustaining economy. It's pretty hard to grow corn when the farmland tends to catch fire, and good luck getting a bountiful harvest in a place literally called the Realm of Death. Fortunately, Ghyra produces metric tons of food, medicine and aqua garanis, which insect convoys transport to the most desolate corners of the realms. In return, Ghyra needs a steady supply of weaponry and action magma to prevent Ghyran's wildlife from turning the city into a medieval reenaction of A Sound of Thunder. In terms of the military, the army is mostly focused on well-trained, versatile infantry squads, as the dense jungles prevent the efficient usage of heavy machinery. Their colors may seem familiar, but unlike their flamboyant cousins, the Gyranites prefer to tune down their colors and add some plants as camouflage. Their insignia features a rideable beetle because Ghyra is too cool for horses, and a rare hippocampus, which can only be found returning in areas that have been completely purged of chaos corruption.
I can see my house from here.
Back to Aqsha, to the top of the humongous mountain range called Titan Spear. Here we find a city called Tempest. I don't know which imbecile decided a magic-tainted mountain range would be ideal to build a metropolis on, but yet here we are. To solve this problem, the city is home to a large number of dwarf engineers who have built a plethora of steampunk lifts and carriages to transport goods and people between the many sections of Tempest. Outside of being a big middle finger to gravity in general, Tempest is known for two things in particular. The first of these is the Ether Guard. This warrior guild maintains a range of observatories which keep vigil over the surrounding lands. This, in combination with a large collection of magical oratories, allow them to adequately predict where military assistance is needed the most. That brings me to the second characteristic of Tempest, namely its massive skyborne fleet. Dwarven gyrocopters, elven skycutters, the stormcast of the Tempest Lord Stormhost, and even a large amount of Caradron who want to protect the very profitable Skydocks. Whenever the Ether Guard's watchful eye spots a threat, the city sends out a big fuck you Skyfleet to obliterate whatever dares to mess with them. Similar to the previous cities, Tempest maintains the red and white, but it has added a lot more natural tones to the scheme to reflect their mountainous home. Their insignia features a goat, because we all know goats are immune to gravity, as well as a hippogriff that represents their piercing gaze as well as their airborne army. Are you into utterly irresponsible magic casting? Do you like nukes and does severe PTSD sound cool to you? Then Hallowheart might be the city for you. Built upon the more or less purified Tzeentchian stronghold known as the Shimmering Abyss, Hallowheart makes its living by extracting magical ores and artifacts from the surrounding mines. Because of this, the Collegiate Arcanum has a particular interest in the city and many mages have decided to move there. The non-mages, however, spend most of their time in the mines, trying to avoid being turned to dust by rogue magic or being kidnapped by the Tzeentchian creatures that still inhabit the darkest corners of the mines. Things get worse, however, for those part of the Hallowheart military, as they get to accompany the utterly deranged battle mages that lead their armies. Hallowheart's armies are normally clad in blue and white, but most armies come back from their campaigns with their armor charred black and bits of their friends hanging from their shields, with the scarring of their armor being nothing compared to the massive amounts of mental scarring they've suffered in their campaign. See, Hallowheart's armies specialize in wild magic, endless spells, and whatever other destructive force the wizards can conjure up, but as every Total War player can testify, those spells don't always go in the right direction. So whether it is by magical accidents in the mines, wild magic running rampant in the streets, or a failed spell, most Hallowheartians tend to have an explosive end to their life. And yes, obviously their insignia is a fire ghost with a massive lava axe, because of course it is. The Living City is probably the most stereotypical Ghyran city you could find, and it was actually grown into existence by Alarielle and her Sylvaneth. This wooden plant-covered fortress offers refuge to all hippies and hunters of the realms, and sees mortals living together with the Sylvaneth. I do have to admit, however, that this city is a bit awkward, as it used to be the Wood Elf city, but those units recently got retconned, so this city is kinda left without much lore at this point. You can take Sylvaneth in your army, that's cool, I guess. In terms of color scheme, they are unsurprisingly green, with extra green and some additional, green. Their insignia features a Sylvaneth for obvious reasons, together with a certainly not Wood Elf who carries a carafe with Aqua Garanis. I'm sorry, Living City fans, your city kinda got shafted this edition.
If at first you don't succeed, blow it up again!
On the other side of the spectrum, we find the industrial fortress known as Greywater Fastness. Instead of trying to live together with the Greenpeace rioters, this city just blasted them to high heaven the moment they tried to get close to the city walls. Located within the industrially polluted wasteland known as Gulmere, this city is basically in a never-ending war against the Pale Oak Sylvaneth. Needless to say that the city's defenses are unrivaled. We're talking Attack on Titan levels of fortifications, with mobile artillery pieces, cannons, and magical wardings and more. Going outside the city is a rather dangerous affair, however. There is one road to the city which is guarded by Stormcast and other Sylvaneth alike, which allows for more or less safe passage to and from the city, but everyone who strays away from this path will be turned into Sylvaneth fertilizer. Greywater Fastness doesn't care much about the risks, however, as the fires of industry demand a constant inflow of resources, and small armies regularly travel to the borders of Gulmere to harvest every plant, rock and Sylvaneth they can find. The reason for this mentality is that the sole focus of Greywater's populace is the production of guns and gunpowder. The people even sleep in 3-shift cycles in order to make sure the forges can keep on running day and night. Needless to say, their army too is heavily focused on artillery and gun-wielding infantry, all too eager to deliver a proper Greywater welcome to the enemies of order. Their color scheme sees a dark black frame with bright yellow accents, although admittedly these are more often than not scorched with black powder. The insignia feature sable hounds wielding the tools of war and industry, displaying their dogged perseverance as well as honoring their nickname of war dogs. By the way, Phoenicium has been demoted to a minor city now, so it doesn't deserve any screen time. Let's move on to my boy Shaiish next. Part shrine, part corporation, and part penal colony, no city has managed to commercialize Fate as much as the Shaiishian metropolis known as Lethis. Before the Necroquake, this city's economy ran on the export of peace water, a memory-wiping drug that they continuously pumped up from the nearby lake. In order to operate the mechanisms needed for this industry, as well as any other energy-consuming machinery in the city, they built a massive system below the city known as the Everwheel. Basically, it is a massive wheel pushed around by prisoners and captives, which uses their manpower to keep the city running. Alongside of this, they also had a widespread market for amulets to the local dead god known as Morda. This was supposed to be mostly a scam, but during the Necroquake it turned out that these amulets actually worked, and moreover, that those buried under the Bleak Raven's wings were actually shielded from Nagash's grasp. This has led to a massive inflow of people coming to Lethis to buy amulets or earning themselves a Mordian burial by working the Everwheel for a certain amount of time. And so it was that Lethis grew to massive proportions, and the worship of the Bleak Raven Morda became astonishingly popular. And yes, I realize that this is basically the Church of Ephes in Age of Sigmar, but I digress. The Lethis military, who features more priests than the Vatican's daycare center, is dressed in purple and black colors, adorned with a variety of charms, amulets, and sigils to keep them safe from undead influences. Their insignia, meanwhile, is one of the coolest out there. Featuring the Cadaver Defiant, a patron for all undead who try to defy Nagash's will and are a big fan of My Chemical's Romance, the Black Parade album. Opposite to him is the Raven Morda, their patron god whose music guides the wayward souls to peace.
Do you feel it? The burning light of Sigmar, scorching your soul and breaking your bones!
Have you ever heard the tale of the Great Purge of Vindicarum? It is not a story the Azerites would tell you. Not too long ago, the storm host of Vindicarum, known as the Celestial Vindicators, brought Sigmar's fury to the populace and butchered all but the most devout of Sigmar's followers. But hey, at least they didn't call it the first purge of Vindicarum like the Knights Excelsior would have done. The result of this purge is modern day Vindicarum, a city filled to the brim with zealots, flagellants and pilgrims. But what is really cool about Vindicarum is what you get when you read between the lines. See, this is a religious city known for its religious music and songs that fill the streets and that accompany its many crusades. But this is also located in the realm of metal. So in my head, this is basically the city of Powerwolf, Demon Hunter and the like. A sort of Avatar country, but in the medieval times. Headcanon aside, this city's zeal has only gotten worse in recent times, as the priests blame a lack of faith for Bellacor's assault during the Broken Realms saga. During this attack, most of Vindicarum was laid to waste by Bellacor's Chaos Legions, and the population has been crusading and repenting extra hard to prevent this from happening again. Located in the realms of metal, and thus being heavily influenced by the Caradron steampunk Boogaloo, their insignia features two mechanical horses, who have actually also replaced the native horse population. Their armor meanwhile has been made into the same color scheme as the Celestial Vindicators to, let's say, display their utmost devotion. It furthermore features a lot of precise metallurgistic details which hint at their Camonite background.
Well, more boned than usual. Eminently boned, species-wide bonery, ultimate boneration, my friend, absolutely 100% bone!
Chaos Uprisings, Stormcast Purges, Skaven Infiltrators, Orc Walls, Beast-Shapen Curses and more. Excelsis has seen it all and yet somehow still manages to cling on to life. In the realm of beasts, life always finds a way, and in the case of the so-called City of Secrets, the main reason for its prolonged survival is the Spear of Malice. During the end of times, the world that was got wall-eyed, and this spear is a piece of the condensed world that broke off and fell down into the mortal realms. Don't ask me why, but the fragments of this rock can contain prophetic visions, which the inhabitants of Excelsis have turned to their own advantage. Both as a way to see opportunities and threats a long time in advance, as well as by turning it into a massive commercial success. Because with the exception of Phoenician players, who wouldn't want a glimpse into the future? Fun fact, Excelsis even uses smaller fragments called glimmerings as their currency. Of course, outside of that, the city also does have its fair share of monster hunting, because there is very little else to do in Ghur. This leaves them with a plethora of magically infused meat and regions, which they basically use as steroids to boost the strength of their troops. In terms of color scheme, we are looking at off-whites with some brown accents, or in other words, a complete pain in the ass to paint. At the insignia, well, it's beasts, to represent the realm of beasts. Well, what can I say? The Knights Excelsior are pretty cool, but the city itself is mostly just a beatstick for chaos and destruction forces.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
The Lumineth Realm Lords living in peace with the lesser races in a wonderful magical place called Settler's Gain. It almost seems too good to be true, and that is because it is. Located in the realm of light, this city seems like a utopia of study and knowledge. Solar energy powered Tesla robots take care of the menial work, it is home to the biggest school of magic in the realm, and its dungeons contain books and artifacts beyond imagination. The Lumineth act as stewards and teachers to the other inhabitants of the city, and for those looking to learn about the arcane, there are unrivaled amounts of potential in Settler's Gain. Yet for those who fail to meet the expectations of the Lumineth, and especially for those who disagree with the Lumineth's way of life, a very dark fate awaits. Some will go on a spiritual journey to the re-education camps, from which they return as magically lobotomized sycophants. Others will disappear into the floating crystals, never to be seen again. In the end, Settler's Gain produces some of the most magically capable forces in the realms, with a much lower chance of spontaneous combustion than those of Hallowheart. But yeah, you do have to forfeit some, if not all human rights in return. Fun fact, in their casual disregard of the lesser beings, the Lumineth refused to build stairs to their floating academy, so unless you can fly, feel free to fuck off. In terms of color scheme, we basically got the Alliance from World of Warcraft, and before you start weathering, these troops are notoriously known for being anal in regards to cleaning their armor. Settlers Gain insignia, interestingly enough, also features its elven name and is flanked by 2 avian creatures to represent the tall spires and floating islands of the Lumineth. I'm not even going to try and pronounce this, sorry Scandinavians, but it's just Misthavn to me. Located in the shadowy realm of Ugu, this pirate's nest is a fun blend of Bilgewater and Las Vegas. Rather than being bold like a normal city, Misthavn consists out of an uncountable number of bound together ships, planks, flotillas and otherwise drifting materials. Its inhabitants are exactly what you would expect: illicit traders, gamblers, rogues, questionable wizards, dark elves, or as the Azerites just call them, scoundrels. This goes so far that even the local storm host has completely given up on establishing law and order. As long as the gangs and privateers answer to the call of war when needed, they can kinda do whatever they want. The large number of pirates, privateers and corsairs inhabiting Misthavn have meanwhile resulted in Misthavn's navy being the best in all of the Mortal Realms. On land, the Misthavn military instead use their affinity for shadows and trickery to constantly outflank their opponents, preferring to strike from the shadows and preferably in the back of their opponent. Hey, it's a good strat, the front tends to step back. Their armor further facilitates this as they wear mostly shadowy colors with some sea blue accents. Also make sure to pop out your null oil for these guys, as they canonically apply lots of oil to their armor to prevent rust formation as well as to reduce its reflection. Misthavn's insignia is really dope as well. Oquaton the Octopus, who holds a variety of tools that symbolize the naval, criminal and trickery nature of the city. And well, that brings us to the final city of this video. What do you think about the revamped Cities of Sigmar? I personally am a great fan of this new over-the-top medieval style, although I gotta admit I'm sad to see the traditional elven models going away. Especially the living city feels a bit lackluster now. But yeah, it is what it is. If you like the content, please consider subscribing or joining us on Patreon. Otherwise, let me know your favorite city down below and don't forget your daily prayers to Sigmar.